Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's afternoon, yes. I don't know why I get confused with these things sometimes. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Hi, everyone. Hi, Tamina, Revamp, Lecky Cars, Kabir. Hi, Ized, Eliza Interiors. Hello. Hey, our guest is on. Kalawale, hello. Ajoke King, hi guys. So let me just start with introductions and then we'll get into it. Hi, Habitat. My name is Folakemi Oloye. I am the CEO and Creative Director of Teal Harmony Nigeria Limited. Teal Harmony is a renovations and interior design company based in Lagos. And today we're talking, the designer's perspective. The reason behind this is because we wanted to have constructive discussions on how to improve, our industry and also improve our clients, improve what we're offering them, basically. And then also, because of this lockdown, there have been a lot of concerns about how to go about it. So all of those conversations are the things that we're having right now. And today, our guest is architect Ade Shokunbi of PWDC. That is Patrick Waheed Design Consultancy. He's here already, so I will just, add him on immediately. The request to go live comes on. Hi, Daisy. So, hi guys. Yeti Pearl, Ush Ene, Emerald Ush. Hi guys. Can help. Okay, hello. How's it going? So I'll just wait for our guest to come on. To make the request to go live, and then we will take it up from there. One of the reasons why we really wanted this to not just be interior designers is because we realized that the interior designers and architects work hand in hand, and quite a number of us, have interior designers in our organizations or architects. Hi, Yatupel. Hey, guys. And I will just it's connecting, and then we'll take it up from there. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi,
can you hear me?
Very well. Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay,
can you hear me?
I'm going to get my my AirPods so that I can hear you quite well, or very well. So just give me 2 seconds.
Sure, that's fine. We'll be here. We'll be here. Okay, so like I said, we have, and he's going to do an introduction of himself. Well, we have Ade Shokunbi. He's the creative director at Patrick Waheed, and I know a lot of people just know it as PWDC, Design Consultancy. He's the creative director there, and it's a co-creation, so they've got a partnership. And he has been so kind to accept to come on live today, because he's not been on, he's not been on social media for a bit. It took a break off, and he's been very kind to join us this morning, afternoon, all of that.
What did I miss?
I was just saying that you were very kind, because I know you've taken time off, social media for this period, but that you've just come in to give us this time, and you were very kind to give us this time. So saying we should really, appreciate this and suck up all the information.
Well, I hope I'm going to be able to make a contribution. It's like sometimes these things can overwhelm you when you're trying to put your thoughts down and sharing it with people. I'm more of a doer than the type that talks, or, basically, let's see how it goes. Yeah.
So you see, the thing is,
whatever information that I believe I can share.
Sure. The thing I realize is a lot.
Yes, I did. A lot of people in the design space are usually doers. They're like, you know what, I communicate better when I put it on paper. So can you reduce me
Yes,
having to speak as much? So but the beautiful thing is everything we're talking about are things that we do on a day to day, and there are
absolutely.
opinions, there's no right or wrong. So you're good to go. So start
Good.
with an introduction.
So, my name is Ade Shokunbi, or as they say in Yoruba, Shokunbi. Um,
I was going to say I pronounced your surname better than you did.
no, no, it's so funny how when I'm speaking English, it's like the pronunciation comes out the wrong way. But anyway, so I'm Ade Shokunbi. I am a co-partner in Patrick Waheed Design Consultancy. Um, we've been going to we've been together since 2006, 2007, the partnership, and um, we came together because we felt like there was a need. Um, the uh, the partnership actually started because Patrick, my partner, was looking for an architect. He's a self-trained interior designer, and I think he needed another person to help out in an area where he. Can you hear me? Hello.
Hello?
I'm so sorry about that.
Okay, so yes,
A phone
I'm
call
not even
came
sure
in,
if it was.
so we probably might be getting that.
Oh,
Yes, I'm
okay,
sorry about that.
okay.
I don't know how to disable that whilst
I'm
we're.
not. I'm not sure myself, so I usually just.
So we're gonna try our best to just make do. So anyway, we've been working as a partnership for since 2007. The brain's not right now, so I can't really calculate how many years. But we started out doing mostly interior design work, and then that sort of led to doing proper architecture work. And we have over the years been able to do so many or different typologies, just to at least showcase what our design, our architectural philosophy is all about. And I hope that over the years, the people who have interacted with our work can, say that we hit the nail on the head with regards to the briefs that we were given. And I hope that, in terms of how they interact with it, it serves them well. So, brief introduction. I know there was so much that I thought I was going to
So,
say, but like I said, I don't do a lot of talking, but I'll try my best to just keep on, sharing more as as this discussion goes along.
yeah, sure. So one thing to note is that's 13 years doing this partnership.
Yes, 13 years, and it's been a long, hard road, and we actually delved into we set up an art gallery at some point because we felt like there was also a need for us to showcase what our ideas were in that regard, and we had an art gallery called Artistic License. And what we were trying to do with that was to showcase, contemporary art. This was actually before the craze that you actually see out there now all started. And I think we were able to sort of realign the thinking of most of the artists then in terms of the work that they were producing. I'm sure they already had it in them, but I think as a melting pot and trying to bring them together to the fore was something that we were able to do quite successfully. However, design architecture overtook that, so unfortunately we had to give that up.
Or
Yeah. So yes.
um, so I have a question on that one, but I'm going to hold it, and
Okay.
then and let's just start a little bit softer. So what have you been doing during this lockdown? And I know, so this is Happy Ramadan Kareem.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's what I've been doing in the last 2 days. But as per what I've been doing, it's so funny that, you know, you would have thought that with this lockdown, you know, the design creative juices will be flowing, but it has been quite difficult because, you know, you're not too sure about where everything's headed. You know, we don't know where we're going. Yes, it's a time to reflect. It's a time to come up with a new order. I don't know if it's going to be a new Nigeria order or a new world order, whatever, but it's time to sort of like really critically think about what the next move is going to be once this is over. However, you know, going through it is something that requires, I don't know, all one's attention, because what we're thinking about is where we're going to get the next diesel in order to power our generators, where we're going to get the next meal, because you're not sure if certain shops are going to open. So, you know, it has been a little bit more of, you know, thinking about way forward, thinking about self, and trying to grow, you know, because like I said, we don't know where we're headed. And growing, obviously, like I'm going through Ramadan now, so I'm being very religious and spiritual and reflecting on, you know, what I've been doing right or wrong over the period before now. So with regards to work, it's actually quite interesting because like a couple of days ago, I went to see a client. I know we observe social distancing, by the way. I sat like about, we didn't, yes, exactly. I was well covered. But seriously, it's a project that has actually been going on for some time now, about 3-4 years, and the client hasn't been able to make his mind up. It's a project that I'm very much looking forward to because I feel like it's it requires, you know, all the different things that I've been doing before now and trying to put it into this one project. It's a residential project, but it's located somewhere where I believe that my intervention is probably going to make a difference. And sometimes, you know, we architects tend to have some kind of ego where we're trying to showboat or beat the next thing. So yeah. So it's something that I'm looking forward to, and I think the client and I have managed to sort of like, you know, agree on a few things, which is going to make the project go forward now. Like I said, he wasn't able to make his mind up all this while because he's also one of those type of people that's trying to show off, and you know, so I guess two forces have collided. Yes, they are. So, but the key thing,
they push you, and you know, and I think it's just one of those things as a designer. You're always thinking, you know, I always tell my team, like, our best job is in the future. Not to say that we're not giving, you know, our clients right now the best that we can, but it's always in the future because you're always pushing and you're like, you know, I've got to do just, and then when you just have that client that is a show off, it just makes life extra.
Funny enough, this is the second time that I'm working with this client, or that we are working with this client. And the first project actually, you know, he took it to the top of the list basically. So this time around, you know, now that I know how he thinks and, you know, the type of person that he is, it's given me that artistic license to, you know, I mean, I always believe that you're only as good as your last project, really. I mean, if a project hasn't materialized, if it hasn't become a tangible thing, it is still in your head, it's still on the computer as an image, but it's when it has been developed and it's actually been built or it's been created is when a project, you know, takes its own. So yes, it's like the last project that's the best, or, you know, you're only as good as your last project, as they say.
Okay, great stuff. Okay, so, you know, that leads me to one of the questions I was going to ask you that, you know, with a lot of us working from home now and everybody talking about, you know, working remotely, being able to do all of that, do you see that limiting creativity?
I've thought about this actually before this question was put to me, in the sense that I feel, like I said, personally, I thought that, you know, with the amount of time that I have on my hands, I'm just going to delve into everything and just be so creative and just do all the things that I can do that I hadn't done, you know, because of the hustle and bustle that I had been used to before the lockdown. So having gone through this period, you know, we've been locked down for like about 5 weeks now. I
Yeah.
would say personally, I haven't really applied myself as best as I could have. And I think the reason why that is, you know, some of the things that I mentioned earlier, that, you know, we're too busy thinking of other important things, you know, like things um, that are more, I think things that you probably never used to think about before because you were so busy tied up with work outside. So now that you have all this time, you know, it has become a bit of a challenge for me. So I think personally, the lockdown, it has its advantages and it has its disadvantages. I think for the creatives that are like parents, for example, you know, if you're in a situation where you wake up in the morning and the first thing you have to do is attend to your children, look after the kids. You don't have, I mean, you may have a nanny or someone to help, but still, you know, you still have to give them that attention because the expectations of children nowadays is that mommy and daddy are around. It's just, I mean,
Yes,
that's,
like so
yes,
you're
exactly.
getting
So
everything.
absolutely. So I think that has taken its toll. Then there's also the other thing where, you know, for some of us, we might be fortunate enough to be in an environment where we can be creative because all the situation that we have around us is conducive to that. You know, you have power, you have all the things that are required in order for you to be able to sort of like, you know, think about
Good
work.
working internet.
Exactly, you know. So without those type of things, it's like it's very difficult to really apply yourself. I'm an old school person where, you know, in as much as like the internet has saved the day, where you can easily so like do your research and I'm like you know, I read and I go through you know, literature and books and stuff like that in order to sort of like, you know, feed the mind, so to speak, with, you know, what one needs to do. However, you know, like I said, there's so many economical problems that are like affecting how you can create in this during this period, you know, in this unfortunate pandemic that is, you know, because you're so concerned about what's going to happen next. So I think, you know, to the luxury of actually being able to sort of like just delve into work is something that only a few have. Um, I I have it in a way that, you know, I mean, I'm not struggling too much with regards to NEPA, you know, because we have solar, so you know we can have power to do those things, and you know, there's a lot of information that, you know, one can. I think what it is as well for me that basically is that, you know, I think it's now time to sort of like do your research, reflect, and acquire knowledge as opposed to actually being creative, because you know, the creative time is going to come hopefully post COVID, because hopefully the clients are going to need, because there's going to be a new order, there's going to be a new way of doing things, and you have to be prepared for that. You have to have all the sort of like ideas that you can put into place that would actually deal with some of those new challenges or the problems that require solutions. So I'm actually using this time to sort of like gather the war chest, you know, in terms of like how I'm going to apply myself when time is, you know, when the time comes. So you know, what I thought I was going to be doing with this is not being too general, but just seeing how I fit into the mix, you know, from a personal level, because I think that's probably the most important thing, that how do I feel about all this? I mean, I can't really speak for everybody else because I don't know what they're going through. Do you understand? So, you know, in as much as, you know, one has to have an opinion about stuff, I feel like I just have an opinion about myself.
Absolutely.
I hope that's not like a bit of a cop out in terms of like trying to answer your question, but it is
No,
really how I'm thinking. That I think even if people are not doing that now, I think they need to sort of like take that on board and consider that, you know, we can see what the problems are as designers. We can see what the problems are as architects. You know, architects always think that they have all the solutions, but I think what it is now is that we need to listen. We need to observe what other people are going through. And so like having some kind of dialogue that helps reinforce our thinking process.
great. You know, when you said this, it's so interesting that a lot of the times you're thinking, oh, I just need more time. When I have more time, I'm going to be able to do one, two, three, four, five, six things, you know. And then
Mm,
we've now had this lockdown, and quite, I remember for the first 2 weeks, I really was just sleeping and waking up. And you would think that I'll be using that time to maybe read a book, that book I never really finished, or doing. It's so interesting that at the end of the day, you see that you have a lot of that time. But if you one doesn't, if one's not careful, it's very easy for that time to just pass by, and then we'll wake up and just say, "Oh my God, the lockdown is over," and here we are again. So thank you so much
Exactly.
for,
No, that's a very
yes,
good point that
thank
you've
you.
made there, because that's basically what it is like for a lot of people. Because, I'm still in
Yeah.
touch with a lot of friends that are also saying exactly the same thing. So, yes, it is what it is.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you run a design consultancy,
Hmm.
but I know you do design consultancy and then you do build as well. And I
Yes.
realize that a lot of companies in Nigeria do that. Do you think it's possible to do design consultancy alone and do build, and another company does build, or do you think it's better to have everything turnkey?
Well, one of the reasons why we actually went into the design and build side of things is because we felt like consulting or just being consultants wasn't sort of like financially rewarding, in the sense that clients here just do not understand that you need to remunerate for services. So what we were encountering was, clients that just would underprice your fees. So I'm not saying that, you can't practice as a consultant only. I just feel that for us, it didn't work. I mean, there were some projects that we did in the past that were strictly consultancy projects. I mean, they were quite interesting. I mean, they were like very time consuming, because for us, the way we work is this. I don't like underselling myself as a professional. And what I mean by that is that, when you have a project as a consultant, there's enough, or there's an amount of information that needs to be produced in order to get the true intent of whatever your design is executed by others. And what I have found is that because clients don't usually like to pay fees appropriately, you know, clients end up getting a half-baked, what I would say, production of information in order to execute the design. And what tends to happen is that when you give half-baked information for an execution of a project, the project takes on a different form. And what that means is that the people that are interpreting your design are going to do what they think, you know. And I think as architects, having gone through the rigorous training, you shouldn't undersell your final product by giving half-baked information. Unless you're going to say, you know what, I don't care if I'm getting paid peanuts, but I'm still going to do the work. But in this environment, you can't really do that. You can't think that way. But that the truth is, it's a very difficult thing to do here and flourish. So what it meant was, you know what we're going to do is this. We're going to design and we're going to build. And because we're building, the amount of information that we require to produce in order to execute our projects is now reduced. So the time and the effort that is required to achieve that is no longer necessary. So I don't necessarily have to engage a number of architects to do details, do schedules, do all the things that are required in order for our project, or the intent or the intention that we have to be, executed. So what that meant was, okay, you know what we're going to do is we're going to sort of like really go into this design and build thing. We'll produce the information that we know in terms of like detail, in terms of like, putting all the necessary ingredients in order to make a good gumbo, a good soup. From experience, you build on that. So the amount of information you now need or require is somewhat limited. So, and there's also this problem that we have these days, especially at the level that, most of us are working at, where clients just feel like we're not capable. And you have the foreign incursion where, they go out to SA. I'm not like trying to,
Of course,
you know,
it's the truth of what it is.
yeah, because they feel like we're not good enough. And even if we try to, because they don't understand that most of these foreign practices that they go to, if you go into these practices, the number of people that are working there, so they have crazy.
I think the internet.
Network issues. So basically we felt like, okay, in order for us to maintain a certain level of integrity of our work, our best approach is to do the design and build, and that's what we've been doing. And I hope that, you know, the people that have engaged us thus far have actually seen the benefit of why it is best to engage us in that kind of manner, as opposed to just getting us to be consultants.
Okay,
I hope that
great.
answered your question in a way.
It's definitely, definitely. You know, when you think about it, um, you, you know, maybe because of it's so interesting that when they hire international companies, they're very happy to pay that consultancy fee, that just that design fee alone. But when it's in Nigeria, they're thinking, you know,
Absolutely.
there's
Absolutely.
there's it's a cultural thing, I think. People
Yeah,
don't like paying for things that, you know, if it's physical and they can see it, then it makes sense to
absolutely.
pay for it. But because it's
Absolutely.
just in here, they're like, oh, please, why do I need to pay so much? You
But you
know,
know
so
what's interesting about what you just said is that what they don't understand is that it's a double-sided sword, in the sense that, for example, you know, you get clients who would get you to do a design, and because you know that if you were to specify a finishing material of any type, because you might not necessarily have other specifications that will guide you in terms of how to apply it and how to, you know, install certain things. Because ideally, as the architect, you're supposed to do your research into whatever finishing material you're going to be using and how it's actually going to be fixed. So these guys would now say, you know what, I don't need to do all that. So obviously they've undermined what the
the design will be the final outcome.
yeah. So
The
they
internet,
end up
right?
buying, yeah, internet. I'm so sorry about this. I'm trying my
It's
best
fine.
to see if I can switch on to just the mobile network. I think I'm using the home internet. But what I'm
Yeah.
saying basically is that they will now go and buy very expensive material or finishing material, and once they bring it, they're expecting it to be forced onto whatever um, um, for lack of a better word, to the, so like, you know, what's to receive it. So what tends to happen is that you now see the finished product that hasn't been well thought through, well planned, and it's botched. So I feel like we have a long way to go, and I hope that people that are doing it right continue, but and then all the others that are not doing it right can catch up.
Totally. You spoke about materials. Um, do you see? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay. So
I
I
can
was
hear you
saying,
loud and
just
clear, loud and clear.
yes. Okay. So you spoke about materials, you know, and you know some clients buying ridiculously expensive materials, and then sometimes, you know, just forcing some materials on some build, which compromises the original intent of the design in the first place. Do you see a shift of materials post-pandemic? Hello. Hello.
Hello, so sorry. I don't know. The network is really bad, so I apologize. I think it's coming from my end. Um, but
It's
we'll
okay.
just continue. So
It's okay. We struggle with internet all the time, so it's fine.
yeah.
Yeah. So, do you think there will be a shift in material use post pandemic?
Well, not that I think there should be, because even if people are not thinking about that now, I think it's something that should happen. It's very, very important. Uh, I think first of all, there should be some kind of what I would call investigation of how to apply certain kinds of materials. I think we're going to have to get the experts in certain kinds of materials to sort of think of, because one of our biggest challenges really is that we need to look at how we can be sustainable with the materials that we're going to end up using if we're going to sort of move from what we're used to, in the sense that we don't want materials that are going to just be very temporary. We need materials that are going to last, not a lifetime, but, have a long lifespan. One of the biggest challenges that we tend to have here is that materials that are manufactured locally, I think because there aren't standards, you understand, I think the problem that we're finding is that they don't have a long lifespan. So that turns people against wanting to use those type of materials. Having said that, I think what's going to happen after this pandemic is that we're going to have to be really hit hard economically. So, and I think that whole notion of traveling around the world to bring in different finishing materials is going to be a bit difficult to do because the money to do that might not necessarily be available. So yes, I think there will be a new shift towards locally sourced material. Now it's for the designers and the architects to know how to apply these materials, how to make use of them in a very effective way. And that requires research and, it's not about just picking something up and just slapping it on, it's about seeing how to get the best out of it. I mean, we have so many different natural material that can be used for building houses, for example, that have served us very well. If you go back in time, you look at the different types of mud buildings that are still standing in our different hometowns, so, and we have abundant cement. We have so many different types of materials that can be used in an ingenious way in order to achieve a beautiful design, beautiful architecture.
Okay, so you said something now about how it's not just a function of getting the material and just slapping it on. It's about researching, and saying what's the best way, what can we best get out of this material, and that leads
Absolutely.
me to how we have, it's not like we're standardized like that in Nigeria. So you see all sorts of designs, and you see all sorts of buildings and all whatnot. So my
Yes.
question then would be, how do you react to this? How do you react to this? And how do you critique other people's work?
Good question. How do I react and how do I critique? I think, generally for a lot of us, I think the initial reaction is very subjective. It's like, you think, oh my God, this doesn't look like what I would have done. Do you understand? And therefore you just critique it based on that alone. However, I think what you have to understand is that people have choices. Do you understand? And I'm not saying,
Mm,
and they say sometimes or most times that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So for
true.
example, one thing I learned a long time ago, in as much as I still feel like it is necessary to critique something that you see, be it good or bad. But one thing I learned a long time ago is that I remember back in the days in the UK, excuse me, my Oga and myself went to see a client, and we, he bought a building that he wanted um, to remodel. And the first thing that was said to the client was that, man, this is a really ugly building. And the client was livid. He just went completely mad. That how the hell could we say that? Because obviously that meant that, that he didn't make the right choice in terms of what he had bought. So I find it that one has to be really careful because, sometimes being harsh, especially when you're being subjective about your criticism, can be very, might not be taken the right way. But I think the factors that determine how you critique is having a better understanding of what you're criticizing, having a better understanding of the position that the person who created whatever you're criticizing was in order to make the decisions that were made. And I think one has to just take oneself out of being, being subjective, and try and be very objective about whatever you're criticizing. So but if I talk about how subjective I can be when I see things, is that, I feel like a lot of people that are doing stuff these days are doing it based on the fact that, the level of information that you can actually get online these days is in abundance. So without having a very good understanding of how to put things together, you just get a mismatch of activities going on, in one setting where you see somebody trying to be very contemporary, but they still try and be traditional. Not that that's a bad thing, but if you have an understanding of the two different elements, do you understand what I'm saying? Putting them together might begin to make sense. So overtly out there, it's a bit of an eyesore. So my critique is, I just hope that the people that are producing these things can just take, you were asking, how can we be creative during this period? Is to study more about whatever it is that they're doing and have a clearer understanding of it, so that once the floodgates are open, the way they start applying themselves to design, architecture, what have you, even fashion design is different. So I think, like I said, it's unfortunate, but sometimes it might not necessarily be the designer's fault. It may be the client who is saying, no, I want that, put that there. So where we now have to develop an attitude to deal with that is having a clearer understanding of what it is that we're about, and knowing how to communicate without necessarily, messing up the client's ego, because most of these guys, it's about their ego. Like I was saying to you about the client that I had a meeting with the other day. He is very much trying to show off. And I could, without having a better understanding of how I'm going to create the architecture, just start listening to him and just throwing everything at this. So I have to have a level of constraint and a lot of a level of understanding of what I'm doing. Luckily, one has been doing it for a period of time where you can begin to, articulate whatever design you're going to make. And I think what it is as well is that people shouldn't be too afraid to share their design, get comments from their peers or from their contemporaries or from someone before it is actualized, because once it has been made, it's too late. So when you're at the design stage, try and see how you can just have like a what they call this in this town, a crit of your work. Oh, guess what, I have this design, because that's what my friend and some of my friends and I do. Like we'll send something and say, well, what do you think? And it's so funny because sometimes you might be so locked into what you're creating that you oversee certain things that are not right. You might have a space that is not functioning right because it's probably not getting enough light, or it is orientated the wrong way because maybe you haven't done your site analysis to know that if you put your bedroom here, someone who is probably going to be working every day from that next building is going to be looking into your space. So there's so many factors that I think we need to sort of like consider in order to do our work, so that people don't criticize it when it's all done.
Absolutely. I really like what you said about the fact that a lot of the times when we're looking at a design and we're critiquing it or criticizing it, it's subjective based on, I wouldn't have done it that way, I'd have done it differently. And that leads me to a conversation I was having this morning. But I also believe that Sandra Edo of Vivabella Designs had mentioned that, one of the ways she had learned design was just observing. And I believe that even when you observe, it's important to be asking the question, why does a person do it that way? I think if you try understanding the why, it makes a huge difference as to, even if you wanted to, you do it the same way, the understanding makes it easier to apply. But without that understanding, and it's just a function of this person went that way, so I think that's probably the right way to go about it. I think that's also one of the problems that we have. Okay, so we're going to go into questions. There've been a lot of comments. So we're going to go into that real quickly, and then I'll come back with my last question.
Not a problem.
Okay, so we'll start. Hi, guys. Thank you so much. Oh, a lot of thumbs up. thank you. Olana Chi says, Teal Harmony Designs, well done. You've made us meet with the best in interior design that we would never have had the opportunity to hear from because of their busy schedule. Oh, you're welcome. Alana, she says, PWDC architects, really look forward to have you do something in the future for me when, of course, I have made some good money.
Well, can I just respond to that particular point? And one of the
Yes.
things that at PWDC that I think we are trying to engage in or with is the fact that we want our client to be a Joe Doe. Joe Doe meaning that it doesn't necessarily have to be someone that has crazy amounts of money in the I don't know, in their sewer or somewhere. But we try to look at taking design back to the to basics, in the sense that you were talking about materiality earlier. I think if we're able to sort of like come up with a solution in terms of like finding new use of materials that are out there, it can begin to bring the cost down. I did a project a while back, well, not a while back, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. And the premise when the project was going to start was, listen, I don't have any money. And I tell you one thing, I mean, that's what the client said at the time. And I tell you one thing, it actually ended up becoming the best project that I've ever done. I mean, personally, in terms of like how I feel about that project, because, it realigned my thinking in terms of like how to apply materiality to the architecture, and because obviously at the end of the day, it's all about the cost of material that determines the finishing material that determines the cost of a project. So if you can find ways of doing your project in a very ingenious way using locally sourced material, it will definitely bring the cost down. And I think it's also about the end users realignment of their thinking as well, that it's not everything that comes from Spain or from Italy that is their thing. So I think we can I mean, we have lots of timber here. It's about just being very creative with things, with material, and hopefully putting it together in a way, I mean, someone that we are all leaning towards that has been around forever, in the sense that their role in Nigerian architecture, I would even go to world architecture, is someone like Demas Nwoko. He's celebrated out there, and I mean, a number of us are actually aligning with his thinking, his principles and his philosophy. And if you go to any of his projects, the material that Demas uses is so basic, but it's about how he uses it that makes it, as amazing as one can see it to be. So I think architects need to sort of like bring out their creative juice, or designers, sorry, I mean, because not everyone's an architect. Bring out their creative juices, and whereby they can make use of things in order to bring down the cost of, whatever it is that we're making.
Great. And I'm not sure if that's what it is, but I think this is Monsieur J. He says, please, can you refer some literature on modern vernacular architecture?
Some literature on modern vernacular architecture. I think there shouldn't really be, we shouldn't just go to what is now modern from what was done before. I think we need to first of all go back to the roots. And what I mean by that is like we need to study vernacular architecture. There are some books that I have that talk about, I mean, what is vernacular architecture really? I mean, is it because people always think that it's about using locally sourced material, but I think architecture, in as much as they all have labels, is something that one has to always find new meaning. So I never really slide the word vernacular into my architecture. I always just call it architecture. Yes, we're living in modern times. I used to think it was just all modern architecture, but it isn't. I think also trying to put labels on our architecture, personally, sort of like undervalues what the true essence of our architecture is. Because, there's so much about architecture that it shouldn't just be sort of like labeled as something. I think, yes, for the sake of being able to identify it, people label architecture, But at the same time, I think what we should just try and do is create aesthetics that relate to where we're from and relate to our culture and relate to, you know, our traditions. However, they should always have the most important thing, and that is that they're comfortable to be in or interact with.
Great. Flaming Ginger says, so does that mean you don't design unless you can also build? And what if the client doesn't want you to build?
That's something that I feel like all of us need to be able to develop. We need to we need to have a position that we believe in. So there have been times in the past that a client would ask, design something, and you know, we were talking about consultancy work,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. My problem with just doing a design and giving it to someone else to build is that I will never be given the opportunity to create a complete project by any client, because obviously time, effort, and all those things will never come into place. Most times clients want things like yesterday. So if I'm going to design something that is half-baked and then get somebody else to build it, which has happened in the past, you go to whatever it is that you design and it's completely different from what your intention was, even with the design, with the information that you give them, they just totally change it. So I just feel like, you know, I mean, there have been projects like that that I cannot make a claim to, as in like I'm not responsible because of what they turned out to be. So why we design and build is that, I'll give you an example. I've been on a couple of projects where my initial design was very different or was improved upon a million times when I built it. Because, you know, like I said, I wasn't given adequate time to come up with a proposal or a concept. They wanted it quickly. So when I get to site, what I tend to find out is that, okay, I didn't think this thing through properly. So let me improve on it, or let me make it come out much better. Yes, most times it's actually at my own expense, you know, and these are mistakes that are made by a lot of us, that obviously the more you do it, in terms of like the more you're sort of like practicing, hopefully these mistakes become, you know, you avoid them. But the one that I'm about to talk about now is that I was doing a project where the client wanted a big open space. And unfortunately, the design at the time, which I wasn't completely aware of what the structural engineer had done. So he had columns in the space, you know, that were like really affecting the efficiency of that big volume space that the client wanted. So I ended up having to redesign and value engineer, but instead of value engineer downwards, it went upwards, because I needed to create this open space, remove the columns. So obviously I had to sort of like make the slabs much thicker. By the time I was done with this, work, it ended up costing over 16 million. Just 16 million. It wasn't a lot of money. However, I'm just joking. However, going back to the client and saying, guess what? You know, that space that you said you wanted, in order for me to get it right for you, it has cost an extra 16 million. So, but point is, two things happened there. I didn't communicate it with the client because I was designing and building. However, I knew for a fact that I needed to do that. Otherwise, they would have had a space that was not completely useless, but didn't serve them well. So the client wasn't happy that I didn't carry them along. So the mistake that I learned from that, obviously, is that, you know, if you're going to be doing things of that kind of magnitude, making changes of that kind of magnitude that can adversely affect the budget, it is best to always carry the client along. Always carry the client. Your level of communication has to be improved upon if you're not on that.
What just happened? Okay.
So that's basically what it is. You know, how one needs to be very careful when it comes to taking on projects as a consultant or I mean, for us, basically, I have to be very careful that the intention is actually carried through. That's why most times when I'm actually putting out a project, in terms of like trying to share it with people on social media, for example, I never put out renderings. I've only done that one time, renderings of what our project is about, because I feel like most likely it's going to change. And I mean, things are made surely, but I just believe that it is best to just, if you're going to show whatever it is that you've done, show it in its best light.
Thank you. And I'm sorry guys, but this is our last question. Spring Bridge, Spring Bridge Studios. How do you harness collective creativity from staff in your firm? And what is the creative process like from the start of a new project?
Okay. It's a very simple thing, really, because most times the projects or the typology of the project are quite repetitive. So you tend to take out, depending on what the brief is actually, what the brief says, you take out what is best from your last project, obviously combine that with what the brief requires, and try and reflect that in a manner where you're trying to hopefully improve on your last outing. And that can be in different, I mean, for example, I'm working on a project right now, and one can argue that the process of how I work these days, or how we work these days, is going back to what I said earlier, which is like, peer review, getting people that you trust to, hopefully add their own 2 cents. So we're working on a project. It's a mosque, and this is a project that had been on our table for a very long time. The first initial brief came like about 4 years ago, and that's another thing. Projects do take time, going from concept to completion. So the project came in, and we had done several designs, but it was a project that a group of people were donating to a community. So the project was going to be determined on how much they could put together to actualize this project. So I have a very good friend who has been my rock for some time now, who has always been there. I mean, I'll name him actually just to shame him that he's a good person. His name is Toya. So what happened was the project came in, and we recently sort of like downsized and had to, sort of like spread ourselves a little bit. And I have this young lady who I felt at the time needed a little bit of brushing up. And there's only one person that I actually felt was capable of helping out at that time, and that is Tuyo, because he has a very disciplined approach to being an architect, and I really rate him highly. So I sent the lady to his office to sort of like work on this project. That's another thing that we should try and do out there, guys. See how we can actually collaborate in relocating our staff sometimes. So I got her to go there. I got her to go to the office, and she was working on this mosque. And, we were trying to be very sort of like Islamic in our language. However, when we obtained approval, it was something completely different from what we went to site with. But before I commenced work on site, I completely changed it, because first of all, I felt like the project required more than what we were offering. And from an Islamic point of view, I felt like there was more that I could add to it, as opposed to just being the architect. I could donate my time, my effort, and some cases, and then in some case, financial contribution as well. So the project changed when we got to site. So what I'm basically trying to say is that in terms of like our processes, it's not defined. It's not. It sometimes isn't specific. It is, it's sort of like it morphs from one project to the other, and that's what happened with that particular project, where things were created in the office, And when we got to site, it took a complete 180-degree turn.
Great. So we've reached our 1 hour mark. I need to save this, but if you could just give us like a minute or so, I want to save this and then we'll come
Deborah
back.
answered my question
Okay.
directly in your last response. Sorry, I was just reading one of the comments by someone that I know.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll be back in less than a minute.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. Guys, please see you in a minute or less. Thank you.
Hi guys, thank you for coming back. Thank you. I hope we're learning a lot. Like my notepad is always full during these sessions. Like I'm always, it's so interesting when you hear other people's analogy about how they do what they're doing, and then it makes you realize, okay, maybe I need to tweak this aspect of how we do ours, so that we can improve. So I'm really, really hoping that we're learning during these sessions, and just finding out areas where we can improve our businesses on. So we'll just wait for our guest. Our guest again is architect Ade Shokunbi. And he is the creative director at Patrick Waheed Design Consultancy. So I'll just wait for him to come on and then we can take it up from there. Thank you so much, guys, for coming back. Thank you. We'll just wait for him to come back on and then we'll take it up from there. Yes, he's back. Oh, thank you so much, Abi Literia. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Yes.
Yes, we're back.
Can I say one thing?
Please.
I mean, I'm gonna say one thing, and like I was saying to you when we first started, I'm never comfortable doing these things, yeah. But I must say that you have made me feel very comfortable,
Thank you.
and I really appreciate that. So thank you for inviting me. I mean, obviously I can do this at the end of it, but like I just thought I'd say that now. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. And I really liked what you said, from that last conversation where you said relocating staff, collaboration on that level, because it's so easy it's easy to even have someone that the person is good, but you're struggling with communication with that architect. And so it will be very great if we're exploring, why don't you go to this firm, go to this studio, see, and someone else can help you identify or even find something really, like a treasure that was already existing, but you had no way of knowing, someone that would be able to teach them differently than how one has been teaching them. It's something that never occurred to me before.
No, you said it all, because that is, you should see how this lady, and the funny thing is the lady that I got to go to my friend's office. I mean, she's been with us for like 6-7 years. She's one of our longest staff, and the new skills that were what she was able to attain from just being around my friend's office and with interacting with the other guys in the office, in the studio, was incredible. So I mean, I know we're very selfish people sometimes, so it's not something that everybody will take on, but I think it's something that we should try and work on and see if it is something that can be added to what it is that, because we have to be responsible for the young people coming up, because we don't know it all, and if they don't get exposed to other ways of doing things, they only know one way. And you know what it is as well is that generally staff tend to have like a very short lifespan in offices before they move to the next one. So yes, they can gather the experience for themselves by doing that. But there are some times where I believe that, you know, you as an employer have to create an environment where these young people would want to stay longer. And it's not about giving them that sort of like inclination or that inkling in their mind that let me just go somewhere else and just improve on my skills or whatever. Give them the opportunity to go out there whilst they're still part of your establishment or your employment. So I think it's something that I discovered just by chance, and I think it's something that I don't know, people should consider going forward.
It's an amazing,
and you know, like
amazing discovery.
yeah, it is very much so because her skill set has improved quite considerably. I was completely shocked when we were on site on one of our other projects that she was involved with, that the way she was handling the people on site, as in like the level of confidence that she had, you know, because she was more of an office employee. So going to this office, I don't know who gingered her up, but her communication skills improved, whereby, you know, whatever requests were made by the contractor, because this was one of our consultancy projects, you know, she was on top of it, and her response attitude. So because we're a design and build type of practice, I think, you know, going into an environment like that helped her consultancy skills, which she probably wouldn't have gotten by just hanging around our office, you know, all the time. But please give me 2 seconds. I need to bring my power bank because this thing is going to die in a minute.
Okay,
2 seconds.
okay. No problem, that's fine.
Well, I can hear you though. I can still hear you, obviously, with my
Okay, great.
AirPods.
So I'm just going to, let me just take some of the comments. Michael Coker says, we love you, Ade Shokunbi, so brilliant.
Oh, we love you too. Thank you.
Hi, Soso. Soso was here yesterday or 2 days ago. All these days are very mixed up in my head these days, so I apologize.
Saturday.
But Soso, today's Saturday. I'm sorry, I can't process it. But Soso Great says, we can even collaborate creative directors too. You are one person I look up to. Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Was that me or Folake? Me?
That was you.
Oh my God, sorry. No, because you are amazing. So that's why I thought, you know.
Oh, thank you.
So like stating the obvious.
I learned a lot from, Literia, Obi of Literia says, I learned a lot from Architecturio as well. Wow. This Architecturio.
No, I think you need to, no, tell you what, you need to get to you on your next IG live. Don't worry, I'm going to twist his arm because he's a very shy and unassuming type of person, but everybody in the industry knows him, knows of him as well. But he's a great guy, and I feel like he has so much to offer. And I've been trying to get him to, you know, step up to the plate and not just do it discreetly, that he should come out there in the open and take charge, because he has a lot to offer. He understands the whole consultancy aspect, because I'm kind of like, you know, putting him out on the spot now, but I don't care. You know, he used to be a director of James Cubitt at a very young age, and that's no small feat. So he knows, and he's done a lot of good work. Very unassuming guy. So please, let's spread him out there like some Ankara, Ashrabi Ankara.
Another one came to my mind, but I like Ashrabi Ankara. Okay, great. So, you know, final question. What mistakes have you seen new interior designers and interior architects make?
Sorry, can you repeat that question? What
So the question
mistakes?
is, what mistakes have you seen new interior designers and new architects? What mistakes have you seen them make?
Oh, a lot of mistakes. When you say new, are we talking about young, or are we just talking about someone who has just gotten into the profession? Young in the sense that they've just left School of Architecture or School of Design, and they're working, or someone who used to be a banker, you know, and has now come into interior design.
So I think if you don't mind, could we take the two aspects? So young in terms of you just came out of school and you're just doing this, and then young from you just started this business and you know, something like that. Yeah. So not
Okay.
necessarily age.
I think what it is like, just like anything, you're going to get special people who are very quick learners or fast learners who are going to be able to do things. You know, they can shadow someone and learn very quickly and go out there and start doing their own thing. However, my own problem is that there are too many who do not want to go through the proper route of learning, having a mentor that guides them. And I'm not talking about mentor from afar. I'm talking about someone that you understudy, you know, someone that is experienced enough to hopefully help you avoid making those mistakes that are pretty rampant out there. And, you know, I talked earlier about some of the mistakes that I still encounter. And I mean, some people would say that I'm somewhat seasoned at this, in this profession. So the mistakes that I find a lot of young people making is wanting to run, you know, before they can actually walk. And ego tends to come into play sometimes, and not understanding what it is that they're doing comes into play. And what I mean by not understanding is that if you haven't really done your research on a particular topic subject and you want to go and take a shot at it, most likely you're going to have major mistakes. And if there isn't someone to sort of like shield you from those, that's another mistake in itself. Someone not having someone that can shield you from making those mistakes, which is why it's good to understudy. So let me give you an example of some of the mistakes that I've made over time, and that I believe a lot of people are going to make those same mistakes. Nigeria is a very tough environment to practice as a designer, as an architect. And, you know, you are completely and utterly dependent on your clients in terms of like giving you the opportunity to be creative. So I always say, like, how do you get some guy that has never driven a Porsche, or I'm talking about a very fast car, never driven a car, and you now put him on the steering wheel and expect him to sort of like be careful with it? So he won't really understand, because those cars are very difficult to drive. They look good, but they're very difficult to drive. So, you know, one of the things to avoid these mistakes, yeah, is to try and just take your time. You have the whole time ahead of you to actually, you know, do whatever it is that you're trying to rush into now. So take your time and you know, try and ensure that the number of mistakes that you make are limited. But one thing that is very critical, though, is that mistakes are there to be made. You need to make mistakes as well, because sometimes those are the things that allow you to grow, you know, because once you've encountered a mistake that is very massive, it will definitely make you not make that same mistake again. So I think mistakes are good, but you need to just make sure that they are mistakes that hopefully you learn from, and going forward, they're not made again. Because if you're repeating mistakes all the time, it's going to affect your growth. People are most likely not going to engage you to do stuff. And Lagos is a very small place. I mean, I'm talking about Lagos because that's the space that we work in. Lagos is a small space that your reputation would be out there. That guy, don't touch him more. You know, this is what he did, and this is what he did. And sometimes what it is as well is like knowing how to own a mistake or own a situation that went wrong. And if you own it and someone sees that you're truthful about the fact that, you know, even though it was a huge mistake that was made, but, you know, you made it due to whatever reasons, and you are going to learn from it, and you're not going to just act like, man, so what? It's not my problem. Do you understand? And that's another thing that a lot of us do here, where we don't like to sort of like accept that we are the ones responsible for certain mistakes. You know, we always try and put it on somebody else's doorstep. So young people out there, the mistake that they're making, the grave mistake that they're making, is wanting to run before they can walk, and not wanting to stay the course. You know, you get young people that work these days in a lot of practices where, because they feel like they're good at using Revit to, you know, create architecture, that's it. They can go out on their own and start doing their thing, or because they can render very well. I mean, those are really sort of like basic things. I'm sure there are deeper things than that. But I just feel like what is very important for us as a people, as a group of creatives, is being there for each other, being responsible for each other, and not thinking that we can do it all by ourselves. What I've always said to young people as well is that if you feel like wanting to just stay young and be amongst your young compatriots is the way you want to go, don't do it all by yourself. Group yourself, because there are people that have different strengths. You might not have the certain strength that is required to sort of like, you know, achieve the right results. So group, collaborate. You know, like I always say, you can't be a one-man band in this day and age. You have to know how you're going to. I'll give you an example. When you look at one of the sort of like major phenomenons that we've had, which is like the Afrobeat guys, and you look at how they actually sort of like go in packs. Those guys don't really do their things on their own. They just go in packs. So young people, if they want to do stuff, they need to sort of like believe in that same philosophy or that same approach, because I can be there for you, you can be there for me. So I think that's what it is. And so the biggest mistake that they need to try and avoid is that notion, and don't let ego come into this. You know, I think humility is like the key for growth, and you need to know how you can sort of maintain that level of integrity as well, you know, and just always own your mistake. I don't want to be too sort of like, you know, philosophical about it, because we all know what is right. And then the ones that don't know, try and associate with the people that do know. It's as simple as that.
I can't agree more. I really love what you said about the Afrobeat guys, how they go in packs. You know, they have one person doing the beats, you have another person doing fashion, you have another person that is managing money. You know, you have one person that is organizing the shows. So at the end of the day, you see one person playing the music, but there's a lot of
Exactly.
support to that one person that you see on that stage, and that's
Absolutely.
just amazing. I've never thought about it the way you just put it before, you know. So that's great. Okay,
Yeah.
so any last thoughts?
Say again.
Any last thoughts that you'd like to share?
Last thought is, you know, we are going through a very difficult period in the history of the world. And, you know, we look at history and we look at things that have happened before us. You know, none of us can talk about the severeness or if that's a word, but nobody can really talk about what it was like to be in the Second World War. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and that was limited to just Europe and, you know, the Far East and some other parts of the world. But when you look at what's happening now, and you think to yourself, okay, we don't know when the bottom's where we're going to hit bottom. It's still like uncertain, unknown. I think what we now need to do is to see how, as a people, we don't just use social media to vent. What we need to do is the same thing that I was talking about, what I do, which is to make, to actually go out there and make a difference. I'm not saying go out there now, obviously, because we have to abide by the social distancing laws. But the truth is, as designers, we have to come together as one voice, seize the opportunity that we have now to sort of like have these type of sort of like, you know, connection where we talk about whatever it is, but hopefully at the end of the day come up with what is going to help us as a group of people to sort of like ride the next, because there's going to be a new world order and we have to be ready for it. We have to be prepared. And it's not just about fancy design, it's about understanding how to make a policy or create policy. And the way policies are created is not just by the politicians who are there, it is by what we sort of like, you know, fight for, what we sort of like, you know, group together and say to these politicians need to be thought about, need to be applied, and hopefully you know, becomes law or becomes something that is, you know, acted upon. So going forward, design is not going to save the day. Design will, but it's about the methodology of design that's going to save the day. So we need to sort of like come together and hopefully make the change that's required for this country, because right now we don't know. And then the other thing is this. I've just been hearing this thing about how the whole world is obviously trying to ensure that China doesn't seize the opportunity doesn't seize the opportunity that they are like the largest manufacturers. And what they're doing, because they have a serious, crazy war chest in terms of like finance, buying all these companies around the world that are in distress, that are like, you know, so what China is probably doing right now is buying everything. And what we need to do is start to apply ourselves where, you know, we have the numbers. We have to be creative. We have to sort of like start manufacturing stuff locally. We have to sort of, I know people will say, how are we going to do that? There's no NEPA, there's no this, but it is the thinking that's required that will enable us to sort of like come up with solutions to those problems. And I think it's very, very possible. I think we need to sort of like look into ourselves now, as opposed to thinking that the Chinese and the Americans are the answers to all our problems. We have the answers. We just need to dig deep into ourselves, you know, and what this period is supposed to be doing for us is reflecting and pondering on how we're going to take it to the next level. So that's my last thought. I hope it makes sense, because I know I've been waffling on. I hope that the little that I've said, out of all the, you know, the things that I have said today, the little I've said that makes sense, that people take it up and start to do something about it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Those last thoughts were really good. They're really good.
Well,
I can't say enough, you know, because there's a lot of conspiracy theories going on, and they may not be conspiracy theories because it's looking like it. And so it's very important that we're looking inwards and figuring out how can we solve our problems by ourselves, and how can we even be a solution to even other world problems, instead of
absolutely.
just being consumers of every other person's thing. So those last words were spot on.
So last thing as well is that, you know, obviously I'm meeting you for the first time via this IG live thing. I will say that you're doing a very good job to sort of like, you know, at least do something positive during this very difficult time. So this has been very creative, you know, because I'm not in your space right now, but we're able to communicate with, I think about 53 people are with us right this minute. So,
A lot more.
you know, so I'm hopeful that, you know, you continue this on a bigger level once this is over, because you've now created a platform because we need to sit down and talk more. But at the same time, whilst we're talking, we have to be doing. You know, we can't just, you know, do all the talking and not be pragmatic about what we're saying. And because I'm from the school of thought that we have to make, Demasin Woko is our guy who's actually instilling that in us, that we have to be able to make what we think, or what we dine, we have to be able to make it. So the words that we're speaking, the things that we're saying right now, we should be able to kind of like come up with solutions to whatever our problems are, you know. And that is one thing. In as much as we don't know what the future holds, what I do know is that if we apply ourselves and do what we're saying, you know, we'll make a difference. And hopefully our kids who didn't ask to be born during this very difficult period would have a beautiful and brighter future.
Thank you so much for the compliment.
Thank you very much.
You.
So keep up the good work, and you know, we'll definitely be coming to listen to all the other people that you invite to your Go Live. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me a platform.
All right. Thank you. Thank you again for taking out this time. I know that, you know, you were on a break and you just, you know, quickly came in to do this. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I swear to God, I was like, you made me break a rule that, you know, but I think it was, no, don't apologize, because I think, you know, if I'm saying that we need to do this more, every opportunity counts. So being able to come out is very important. So thank you very much.
And guys, on that note, that's the end of today's live session. We have Thai Atilia in the evening, 6 p.m. So let's come, let's have a chat and let's see how that goes. All right then, have a good afternoon. Bye, Ade.
Bye bye, Folakemi. God bless you.
Yeah.